I hope you're both well. I'm going to begin. Firstly, I loved the movie, but the first thing I did when I left the cinema was double check Ian Fleming was actually in this story, and it wasn't just like a cinematic edition. And it felt like the cherry on top of the icing of the cake of this kind of absurd, incredible story. Were you guys aware not just of his involvement, but on this entire operation?
No. No, it was fantastic to discover, to be introduced to the story and to read Ben McIntyre's book, which is the full story, and realise his involvement and learn about Admiral Godfrey and how these characters wound up, inspiring the Bond characters and what we know. So that was really fun.
Yeah, I knew bugger all. I knew the one headline, there was a body floated up. I didn't know whether it worked, how it worked, who was involved in coming up with the idea. What was amazing, diving into it and reading both the book and the screenplay, is how many times it was either nearly a disaster or was actually a disaster. And an idea so maverick, so nuts, so individual, could then be carried through by the establishment, by these huge committees, these rooms full of people who look from the distance like the most conservative bunch of collective minds you could imagine, that they went with. They rolled the dice on, frankly, the entire Allied war effort. But that they decided to back this plan just rife with potential catastrophe.
Johnny, I mean, you've obviously played, David Bowie in the last couple of years, so you're no stranger to playing a renowned individual on screen, but was there a kind of fun, less pressurized experience playing Ian Fleming here? Because this isn't an Ian Fleming biopic, he's just a character within this kind of grand tale. Is that quite a fun way to do it?
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously more pressure if you're carrying the story, and I think there was many more pictures of David Bowie, for instance, in the era that I was playing him, many more clips and recordings and things like that. And he is, as you know, Fleming is an author, and the subject that everybody's obsessed with is Bond, and so Fleming's the man behind that, and David Bowie is so beloved and treasured, and sort of is such a sort of personal thing to people. So there was a lot more pressure in that instance. But I had fun imagining who Fleming was based on what we know about him later, because this is before he was famous, before we had any footage of him, and so that was fun.
I know we're talking of sort of renowned people coming to life. Simon does a great job as Churchill here. I mean, how are those sort of scenes to film? And is it working in scenes like that remind yourselves why you kind of love acting? The kind of costumes, the incredible nature of the story, Churchill, Fleming, and the whole notion of make-believe is at its most kind of enriched and enlightened in a movie like this. Does this really kind of remind you both why you love doing sort of what you do, I suppose?
Well, I think it's a different experience for me than for Johnny, because Simon and I go back to when we were students. We went to the National Student Drama Festival, and we did Death of Stalin together, and so and I worked with Alex Jennings as well. So one of my first scenes with Alex and Simon and other people, to be standing with people who you've done various in different configurations, in different costumes with different voices, you've told different stories before. There's something. I don't know if it's about the craft of acting so much as the community of actors. It was nice to be around Colin and Matthew and I. Our lives have overlapped on and off screen, and there is something about feeling like you're in a repertory company, a giant one that shifts and changes. But I hope that our paths cross again work-wise, and that we do this strange job, which is slightly outside of society, outside of the normal thing. We tell stories for a living, and this is one of those great stories we got to tell.
And I loved watching that. I loved being in this room of old friends, finding themselves thrown in together in this, Again, today we're here, so that was lovely, and these are some of my heroes. So.
Yeah, just very quickly, this is obviously a film that revels in the art of storytelling. Is that what drives you both most, do you think, as performers? Is it still the act of storytelling that inspires you to do what you do?
Geez, I don't fear, anxiety. My wife wants me out of the house. I don't know. Partly it's that sense of community. I mean, it's a million things, but when I started as a student, it was because there was a community. There was a bunch of people I felt comfortable with talking about the real things, the building blocks of human behavior, which seemed so much more interesting than anything else I ever discussed. And it's come around again in some ways, as the world has become more fractured and we're also isolated. I've revelled in the last year or two. Our profession is allowed to continue when many others stopped, in the privilege of being with other people and connecting with other people.
I think, yeah, I do always come back to storytelling as something that I remind myself why I do what I do. And, you know, we live in a world of shifting truths, now more so than ever, it seems. And this is another era in history where we're telling the story of shifting truths in what these people are presenting to each other, presenting to the enemy, and you know, in storytelling, you're dealing the really important part that is why we tell stories is emotional truths, and reminding ourselves why we're human and why we connect to each other and why we love each other and why we disagree and why we, you know, and
that
so
we have more in common with each other than we have that separates us.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So that's the power of it for me, and to look at these things beyond the prism of disinformation and trying to trick each other with facts. This is about, okay, that person tried to do something good. That person is having problems. This, you know, and it's how we relate to each other and feel compassion.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. For a nice, big, profound question there, but that was greatly answered. And best of luck with the release of the movie. I'm sure we'll pass across again soon.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey!